Purpose of this inquiry is for me to hear evidence from the applicant, Historic Environment Scotland, and a third-party objector on potential impacts on historic assets and places, with particular reference to 6 scheduled monuments and the outstanding universal value of the part of the Neolithic Orkney World Heritage Site. When we finished yesterday, Mr. Finlay was cross-examining Mr. Durnan, who's Historic Environment Scotland's Heritage Impact Witness. We will resume with that today, followed by questions from me and then the opportunity for re-examination. Based on the estimate given yesterday by Mr. Finlay, we should be finished by lunchtime. We'll view that as and when if there's any change. I will take one short break during the session. Before we commence, is there any update from Historic Environment Scotland on the documents referred to by Dr. MacLeod-Ribbott and Mr. Durnan yesterday?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, ma'am. Well, first of all, in terms of the notification given to Scottish ministers regarding the Nest Hill application, an urgent request has been sent within Historic Environment Scotland for confirmation that that document can be disclosed. We've asked that confirmation to be given either way as soon as possible.
Okay, if it's not available today, what I'll do is I'll add it on to the procedure notice that I'll issue the wording of the condition on the benefit package. So we'll mop it up in that if just to allow parties to comment on it. Right. Sound okay? Is that okay with you, Mr. Finlay?
Absolutely. Thank you. And as regards Mr. Finlay's request for confirmation as to documents which refer to just term cumulative impacts, I sent an email to Mr. Finlay last night highlighting the document 1511, Holodykes objection withdrawn.
See, that's on the list.
Mr. Finlay has his number 1 on his list.
So sure, I was reading Mr. Milne's email.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any other questions before we start?
Well, perhaps I should just explain that we have a new representative on our front row this morning. That's Murray Foy, who's from Wright Johnson Mackenzie.
Good morning, and see, we even had a nameplate for you, so we were expecting you.
I was surprised there was a nameplate, yeah.
Well, the case officers are on the ball. Okay, thank you. Well, without further ado, over to you, Mr. Finlay.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Durnan. Yes, if we can turn to document 1511, which is the withdrawal of the objection on holodykes.
Yes.
I think you probably all aware or can become aware where the holodyke turbine is. It's in the broad direction of the application site, slightly further east, slightly and closer to the World Heritage Site.
Yes, that's correct.
And I think yesterday you referred to documents plural, but this is the only document you found.
With regard to holodykes, yes.
With regard to cumulative impact.
Yes.
And in this document, we can see, firstly, towards the bottom of the first page, there's reference to the Tildersley study, which we've seen reference to already, being jointly commissioned. We come to that later. Then at the top of the second page, it says, it's therefore unfortunate the proposed turbine review within that wider setting. That's the setting that Tildersley had referred to. And we know, again, Historic Scotland is using the terminology of wider setting. It remains Historic Scotland's view it'd be far preferable for the setting of the World Heritage Site if the turbine was not seen from any of the monuments within the WHS. However, as this was recognised in our initial objections, the planning authority are a decision to object was a finely balanced judgment. Goes on to say that further reduction in the scale of the turbine, and the turbine is at a considerable distance from any of the monuments within the World Heritage Site. So if Holodykes is at a considerable distance, the application site is clearly at a considerable distance. Well, it's bigger, but the distance is clearly considerable using the same terminology.
It's reasonable to say.
Okay. And there's a reference to topography shielding it. And I think the next paragraph refers to decision not to object. And then they say, we'll look at every case on the merits. We do not consider that there is now any scope for further turbines in this vicinity without causing significant adverse impact on the setting of the World Heritage Site. And then I think this is the point that you were referring to. We would be likely to object to any proposals for further wind turbines in this area and would cite cumulative impact on the setting of the World Heritage Site as a significant factor. Is that the passage you had in mind?
No, it was not.
What was the passage you had in mind?
The passage that I referred to in my inquiry report. Please, worried. It's 298.
298. No, I think you may have misunderstood my question. You said there was a reference to cumulative impact in inquiry documents. I understood from that, my apologies, that wasn't a reference to your. I wasn't asking about references to your report.
Yeah.
I see. Clearly referred to this document.
Right. So
in the context of cumulative impact.
yes,
I understand you've referred to cumulative impact in your report, but that's right. I'll ask the question again. Was this the passage in this document that you had in mind?
I understand. So when I was saying that yesterday, I said that I was referring from memory from one of our consultation responses on a different wind farm. That document has not been lodged in evidence. I did have a look through the documents that have been lodged last night, which are orders decisions for those wind farms. None of them mention the line that I was referring to from memory yesterday.
Okay. So, all right. So I misunderstood the basis of Mr. Milne's email yesterday, but just taking this, the statement by Historic Scotland in 2007 about their concern. Since then, and these aren't in date order, I think you refer to it in the paragraph that you've taken us to. Costa Head wind farm has been approved. And just say that we first want to go to if we go to CD 138, just so that we can understand the impact of Costa Head. It's a combined ZTV, which is usually more of use in landscape and visual impact, but it shows what it shows. And in effect, I don't know how familiar you are with these, but the green colouring is the combined visibility.
Sorry, I'm just waiting for that document to open.
Right.
Just
They're quite big documents,
right,
in terms of, so they can take a bit of time.
This one that's figure 6.15 when I've downloaded doesn't have the number extension. Let's begin to leave any moment.
Sprung.
I will do.
It may be helpful to blow it up if your computer will do that, so you can focus on the. But the effectively blue is cost per head alone, yellow is Nist-Hill alone, and green is combined. In terms of impact on the particular parts of the World Heritage Site we're concerned about, whilst there is a, I can call it this way, a slither of yellow as we'll see from the visualizations, cost ahead from the Wodgate and Stones of Stoness. That gives some indication of coverage.
Bear with me a moment, just zooming in on the site.
We looked at the viewpoint in the additional information. I think it's 3.5 yesterday. Mr. Milne took us to that. That was from the Stones of Ring of Broad, I think. And we'll look at the Stones of Stoness, and we'll look at the Ring of Brodgar in due course. But Costa Head has a significant coverage in the. I know that the World Heritage Sites are yesterday 5 individual sites, but in the vicinity of the sites that we're concerned.
So it is within the vicinity of it.
No, it has significant coverage in the vicinity of the site. So it has significant coverage in the vicinity of Stone of Stoness and Ring of Brodgar. And we're not worried about Maze Howell or Skara Bray. I've forgotten what this one is.
Watchstone and the Barnhouse Stone.
Yes, I think, well, again, in the impact on those is not raised as an issue.
So I'm just bear with me, just looking at the map here.
Coverage, do you mean that they can be visible?
Yes.
Yeah, certainly.
But I mean, in terms of the letter, my understanding is visibility is at the heart of HS as it was, and now HES is concerned.
Thank you. Yeah, just making sure that's understanding and correct.
So the ZTV certainly shows coverage across the ceilings, and most of the attendant on either side.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, it's just making use of it. If we now turn to the report for Costa Head, reminding ourselves that their smaller turbines are 125 metre turbines, not 180 metre turbines.
Sorry, what document number is that?
So, sorry, my apologies, 15.5.
Doesn't know this is not right. Yes, I have that one.
Yes, so just again, we take it reasonably briefly, but if you go to electronic page 2 at paragraph 7, you'll see what we're dealing with is 4 wind turbines at 125 metres.
Yes.
And then if you scroll down, there's a consideration given to the World Heritage Site from paragraph 29 onwards. The blades of tips of 2 turbines would be visible from the Ring of Brodgar, distance of just under 16.5 kilometres. From the Stones of Stoness, 2 turbines from hub height, 2 blade tips will be visible, distance of some 17.1 kilometres.
See that?
And panoramic views are available from those locations, those to the north and south, including the ridge lines formed by the Greeny Hill and Skeldale Hill, and those to the south, including dramatic hills of Hoy. In fact, from both those locations, as with the appeal site, Greeny Hill will be slightly on the left or to the west, Skeldare Hill will be slightly to the right, and both Costa Head and the appeal site will fall in the gap between those two larger hills.
That's right.
It will be seen against the same skyline. The current proposal will be,
Yeah.
when viewed from Staines or Staines or Ringabool.
That's correct.
And then in paragraph 30, there's reference to the other wind turbines that are in the vicinity at the moment. Burger Hill, sure, I'm recollect where Evie is, and Holodite, which we've just been talking about.
I see that.
And we see the reporter's conclusion at 31 that visual input of the proposal will be both minor, both independently and in association with existing turbines. And then just say that is in fact dealing with the seascape, landscape and visual impact. It's clearly a relevant conclusion. And then he deals with historic environment at paragraph 35.
Sorry, could I just respond to that particular point? Were you saying that conclusion there, I haven't read this whole document, does that conclusion relate to LVIA and not cultural heritage?
That is relating to LVIA in terms of, but well, it's both, because he's expressly referring there to the impact on OUV, is he not? In paragraph 29.
Is in paragraph 29.
I'm
I'm not understanding the point you were making then about relating to LVIA impact.
Well, it's in a section dealing with LVIA, but he comes to historic environment specifically, paragraph 35, just to record that HES did not object. Do you see paragraph 35 on page 7? Were you involved in that decision?
No, I wasn't. That was before my time. You see that paragraph under historic environment, and I see the paragraphs above that are under a separate heading, headed seascape, landscape.
I'm not too concerned about where the paragraphs lie, but what the reporter can take from that is that with that visibility on to the north from this site, Historic Environment Scotland did not object.
That's correct.
And that when you are considering the impact of this proposal, you're talking about turbines that will be viewed in the same direction over the same sensitive ridgeline.
Is also correct.
So it's not mere visibility that's the issue with this Historic Environment Scotland. So just because they're visible, that doesn't lead to an objection. Because the head is visible.
Yes, no.
On a sensitive ridgeline.
No, visibility purely on its own does not lead to an objection.
But we'll come to the way you expressed it in your report in due course, but that's very helpful. Thank you. If we do the same, can put Costa Head away and turn to Fontaines and doing the same exercise. If we look at the ZTV to begin with, it has much more limited impact from Fontaines in the World Heritage Site. That's CD 139. Again, no doubt, slow your computer down.
Seems to have done all right. That is mainly yellow ZTV.
Absolutely, much more limited from Fontaines. There's an element, and we'll come to the report in a moment, which the reporter refers to in Fontaines, but the there's an element of green covering just to the north of, I think, the Ring of Brodgar and the Staines of Staines, but mostly the relevant impact for those two parts of the World Heritage Site is solely from this hill.
These two parts being the Ring of Brodgar and the Stones of Staines.
Yeah, that I'm not suggesting, just to make it clear to you, not suggesting that Continental would have impacted on those.
Let me just double check that, sorry. So yes, this ATV shows that it's still theoretically visible, both of those.
Then if we go to the Continental report, which I have at CD 1435, I'd first of all take you to electronic page 12 and just ask you to note that paragraph 116, the county archaeologist is recording as having noted and it's the last 2 lines or 3 lines that are relevant, a moderately significant impact on views from Neolithic monuments that are part of the suite of monuments forming the World Heritage Site.
I find it hard.
Yes,
1.16.
1.16. Yeah, if you
Maybe just for a moment to read that paragraph.
just put
Thank you. It already says that. She, it would be at the time. Different county archaeologist. I don't know. A county archaeologist makes a different assessment from HES.
well,
They would
they may have a different remit, but in terms of assessing impact on a World Heritage Site, it's not my understanding whoever's assessing impact on a World Heritage Site should be using the same toolkit in a broad sense of the word.
Yes, they should be, and I think that different professionals, as we have done here with Mr. Locke and I, can come to different conclusions.
Well, that's an extremely helpful comment. Thank you very much for that. Tourism reaches conclusions on cultural heritage and historic environment from 363, and most of it concerns matters that we're not concerned with here. But in paragraph 396, what it says this, no significant effects are predicted. So that's, sorry, electronic page 39.
I have that from the 3.63.
3.96.
96. Just can I just clarify, look through these other decisions, asking me to read these paragraphs and confirm my position on them. I'd like to come back with some points for each of these wind farms. Do you want me to do them individually, or is there going to be an overarching point once you've gone through all of these?
Well,
I just want to clarify that so that I can come back with some information of my own.
But the chance for you to introduce information of your own on these wind farms was in your report and your evidence.
I'll be referring back to the documents that you've already referred to this morning.
Like Mr. Finlay, I take from what Mr. Durnan's saying is he's asking if he'll have a full opportunity to answer your questions.
But that's not as I understood it, Mr. Milne. But let's, in terms of cost ahead, we'll go back to cost ahead because I want to have all your information before I move on to a different one.
So I just want to clarify.
Did you want to add anything? First of all, did you want to add anything to the answers you gave to my questions on cost ahead?
I reading those documents.
I understand that there would be an opportunity for Mr. Mill to pick up some of these points in re-examination as well.
Okay, I'm happy to do that, and I'll
Is that?
get full answers going forward.
Yeah, well, it's up to you, Mr. Donan, but your job here is to answer the questions that I ask you. I know that you've referred to cost ahead in your report, and I'm sure the reporter will take your references to cost ahead in your report alongside your answers. So don't feel that I'm going to be suggesting your only evidence on cost ahead is the ones that you've given to me in your answers.
No.
You've clearly referred to cost ahead in your report.
Yes. I feel like it might be the opportunity for me to clarify some points.
Well,
being asked more closed questions.
The opportunity for you to clarify points on any of these other wind farms should have been taken in your evidence in chief. They're general points. If they're answers to my questions, then no doubt Mr. Milne can re-examine them. But in terms of general points on these wind farms, this is not the time for you to make with respect.
No, and I would be making specific points. Thank you.
Well, general or specific points, but the only points that you can make now must relate to my questions.
Yes, of course, and they will.
Great. Okay. I'll ask you again, were there any more points you wanted to make in respect to my questions on cost ahead?
No.
Okay. So we can come back to Quantum S, and we were at page 39 of 82.
That's 3.96.
No significant effects are predicted by the EIA report. The wind farm will be visible in some outward view, most notably from the Ring of Buchan. But my understanding is the Ring of Buchan is not actually a scheduled monument, nor scheduled as part of the World Heritage Site. It's within the buffer zone, if I've got that correct.
It is within the buffer zone. It is a scheduled monument.
Sorry, it would be a scheduled monument.
Yes.
It's not
But it's not an inscribed part of the World Heritage Site.
a distance of over 12 kilometres, and as it would be seen a gap in the surrounding hills rather than above them, I do not consider the wind farm would have any significant attributes of either the attributes or the World Heritage Site, or upon the cultural significance of any of the monuments within it. So there are two reasons in part, no doubt also relating. There's probably a third implicit, which relates to the height of the proposed turbines. One is distance, and one is they sit in the gap between the surrounding hills. Now, I'd suggest to you that both Costa and Head and the current proposals sit in the gap between Greeny Hill and I've forgotten the other one, Skeldale Hill, but albeit they sit on a sensitive ridgeline.
They do, and I think we can see that different conclusions are being drawn for different proposals based on various factors, including where they're viewed from, the size of the proposals, where they appear in the surroundings, and the spread of the proposals. There's lots of different factors at play here.
Absolutely. And one of the important factors, which I'll come back to, is an understanding of the appreciation of impact of turbines at distance. Is that something you have particular expertise in?
The appreciation of turbines at
Distance, yes. So, because if you look at any of the wire lines, you're not a landscape architect, and wire lines are primarily there to assist landscape architects. But if you look at the photo montages, you'll see and we'll come to one in due course, you'll see that the turbine blades for the proposal site have been shaded so that they stand out. So you can see what you can identify where they are. But as I say, do you have any particular training or expertise in identifying impacts, visual impacts, albeit in a cultural heritage such context at distance?
Not beyond my years of experience of doing that on a day-to-day basis, no.
How many wind farms have you dealt with?
Countless.
Countless.
Lost count, unfortunately.
Okay. And how many wind farms have you dealt with where the impacts are at over 12 kilometres, which have led to an objection?
I could provide a precise figure on it, or there will certainly be some.
Well, no doubt if there's relevant ones, you can be re-examined on it. You would accept, and this is all I want to take from this, that the distance and whether they're being seen in a gap in surrounding hills can be a mitigating factor in terms of impact.
No, certainly not.
Well, that's what the report has said here.
And mitigating impact.
Yes, that's why he finds there are 3 reasons why the reporter finds no impact. I'm going to say there's an implicit one as size of turbines, its distance, and being seen in a gap.
Can you point out where it says there's a mitigating impact, please?
Well, that's the sense of the paragraph. If you
I
don't,
disagree with that.
well, then I suggest you're wrong.
I say that.
And if you can't read the reporter's report in that regard, then I suggest to you that shows a misunderstanding of the approach.
I disagree with that. I don't think that shows that there's in any way a mitigation of impact. I think that's about the level of impact there based on different factors. For example, the distance, being the size of the turbines. Nothing in that paragraph to me says anything mitigation.
I think you may be taking mitigation in a very strict sense, but let's see if I can reduce the tension between us. I'm suggesting to you that it's a factor that reduces the level of impact. Mitigation was a perfectly normal English word used to describe that, but let's leave mitigation to one side.
There's no particular meaning, however, with regards to EIA.
I've seen it used in both contexts, Mr. Dernan, over many years, but leaving that to one side.
I agree with
You
you.
accept
An EIA.
will reduce impact. That's how the reporter has approached it in this case. It's a factor that reduces the level of impact.
I just wanted to reread that paragraph just so I was certain with my answer. There's a phrase that says, as it would be seen in a gap, and then brackets rather than above them.
Yes.
So I just wanted to highlight that it says rather than above them as well as being within a gap.
Absolutely. And do you accept that being seen in a gap rather than above them can be a factor that reduces impact?
The only way that's in any way inherent to the design of the scheme.
I'm just saying in principle, do you accept that that can be a factor if it's seen in the gap rather than above them that reduces impact?
I think with this, the context of the World Heritage Site, with the sensitive ridge lines that are relatively even, but slightly undulating, and there's been talk of lower and higher ridge lines. I don't think that could reduce impact, but I think it could result in lesser impact.
You've lost me there. It's not a reduction, but it is lesser.
Yeah,
I think they're the same concept, but just different use of English language.
no, I disagree. I think reduction implies there's something active happening with the development that reduces the impact there, and I'm wanting to be led by the setting of the asset here.
Well, we are agreed that there's a lesser impact.
I can agree with that.
I think I think again I'm concerned about your use of language for anyone. There we go. We then leave Quantum to one side and turn to Hoy. We don't have a ZTV with Hoy, but we do have, I don't think, but we do have a addition and one visualization, which we'll come to in due course. But if you can turn to the report on Hoy, which is in 2 places, I have it at 1526.
1432.
The other one is 14, either 31 or 32 years.
Yes, I think I have that.
Should be the same report. The decision letter is 1431, the report is 1432.
Yes, I've opened the report.
Yeah. we're on. So if you go to electronic page 3, just to, I don't know, were you involved in this wind farm?
No.
So it was for 6 turbines with a maximum blade tip height of 100 and effectively 150 meters. One can see that on electronic page 3.
That's right.
Reporter discussed impact on a related matter, but I accept it's not the same in terms of the World Heritage status, archaeological landscape from paragraph 339 onwards on electronic page 28. I'll ask you to turn to that. So this is looking, I think, at a special landscape area in one of the, well, it could be, sorry, it's the NSA, National Scenic Area, and one of the qualities is archaeological landscape of World Heritage status. And we can see that in the first 2 lines of 339.
See that?
And if we turn to the last 4 lines of that paragraph, the turbines, including a number of hubs, will be visible from within the centre of the stone circle of the Ring of Brodgar and from the public accessible locations within its environ, including the Saltnau Mound, the the 340 Nature Scott, who are taking the point, refer to temporary met mast and saying again in the last few lines, while the view to the south and wider views contain man-made modern elements within the middle distance, the turbines would appear as larger elements than the existing turbines, which are currently visible within the wider view. Have you got any reason to doubt that is accurate?
Not with regards to natural heritage, which appears to be what those paragraphs are about. Even though they do, this one you referenced 3.40, it does make reference to a cultural heritage viewpoint. And the first one does appear to mention aspects of the World Heritage Site. I think it's clear from that paragraph.
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking you about visibility, which is relevant both to NSA and to cultural heritage. The question I asked you about was whether, in terms of views, which are the same view, whether you're approaching it from cultural heritage or landscape impact, whether elements within those views will be visible, the turbines will be visible, and whether they would appear as larger elements than existing turbines, which are currently visible within a wider view. Now, that is a comparative exercise. I'm asking you whether you accept that the turbines on Hoy that were being proposed and are being permitted will be larger elements than the existing turbines, which are currently visible within a wider view.
Both of those paragraphs relate to natural heritage, and I'm not qualified to comment any further.
I'm asking you about, I'm asking you how they will appear from a cultural heritage perspective. Do you think those turbines will appear as larger elements within the wider view?
I cannot comment on the contents of those paragraphs from a cultural heritage point of view because
I'm not asking you to comment from a cultural heritage point of view, Mr. Dennon. I'm asking you to comment what you would be able to see.
I'll maybe step in because I think we're just going to come up on reflection.
I'll suggest to you, Mr. Dennon, you're refusing to answer a reasonable question, and I'll make submissions of.
Well, I'm going to look at. I think that was an unreasonable question.
Can do, Mr. Dennon.
I've noted the question and the point that you made.
I'm grateful. Thank you. In 341, we note that the separation distance is 18 kilometres. You happy to accept that, even though it falls in this chapter of the report?
Apologies, what paragraph was that?
341, Mr. Dennon.
No, I'm not. This section relates to the Hoy and West Mainland National Scenic Area. If the questions are going to continue to natural heritage, I don't feel like I'm qualified to.
Mr. Turner,
Doesn't relate
you
to them.
listen to the question. Do you accept that the turbines were 18 kilometres away from the World Heritage Site?
Yeah, I will give the same comment, the same answer that I did. The section relates to natural heritage.
Mr. Vernon, at this point, Mr. Finlay's not asking you about your opinion on the impact on cultural heritage. It's really factual about distance. So hopefully you can answer those.
Yes.
If it goes beyond that in terms of
I appreciate that. If we're
the impact.
going to have questions just about distance, then yes, they are 18 kilometres away from the World Heritage Site.
I'm very grateful, ma'am, and Mr. Dunn, your reluctant acceptance of issues is also noted. Do you also accept that there would be no visibility from the stones of Staness, Mays House, or Skara Bray? That's a question on visibility.
Yes, it appears that the ZTB for Hoy shows that.
And then in 342, do you accept that from Ring of Brodgar, all 6 proposed turbines will be visible at a distance of 19 kilometres?
Says yes.
I know that that paragraph
I
says
accept that's the distance. Yes.
And do you accept in paragraph 343 that historic environment in Scotland raised no concern over the effects of setting on the Ring of Brodgar?
Yes.
And in paragraph 344, the reporter refers to much closer modern artifacts in the needed closely between a Ring of Brodgar and the proposed Hoy wind farm. Do you accept that there are much closer modern artifacts in that view?
I've seen the view myself, but on the basis of what that paragraph says, yes.
Have you not looked from the Ring of Brodgar towards the hills of Hoy?
But I don't have a clear picture of that view in my mind at the moment.
So there's a dispute between you and Mr. Lufkin as to the importance of views towards the hills of Hoy.
Yes.
In terms of some of the ancient monuments. Do you consider the views to Hoy are of a key view for the Ring of Brodgar or not?
I think in the sense that they form part of the wider topographic bowl, yes.
I'm singling them out as a section, a particular section of that topographic bowl. Do you accept that they are that particular section towards Hoy as a key view from the Ring of Brodgar or not?
With the context of views within the sensitive ridge tunnels.
I've already made my comments in respect of Marenblow and the case taken there. I'm not going to take you back to that. Thank you. Then I don't think there's anything further in this to go to. We can note that notwithstanding the extent of visibility, Historic Environment Scotland did not object to Hoy on the basis of impact on the World Heritage Site. They did on other issues. On this World Heritage Site, they did on other issues.
That's correct.
Okay. And in terms of the current Loudon Hill turbine,
Yes.
don't have a ZTP for that, but one can see that and see. I don't think actually it appears in the visualizations because when the they were produced, they weren't there, but insofar as one can see it on site, from the site, and depending on the visibility, with the Broca Stone's to Ness. But HES's letter dealing with that is at 1423. It deals both with the closer monuments that we have been concerned with, but also with the Heart of Neolithic Albany World Heritage Site, and it does that at page 6 or 7.
Yes, see that.
The turbine would be visible from the second paragraph is the consideration of page 6 or 7, electronic page 6 or 7.
Paragraph starting, this would be a significant impact.
No, that deals with Parkholme and Stonyholme. It's Heart of Neolithic Albany World Heritage Site below that. And then the third paragraph, the turbines would be visible from the World Heritage Site. Much of the mast would be visible from Stoness, but the turbine would only just be visible above the skyline to the northern views from the Ring of Brodgar. And I think, depending on the orientation as you move down around, some of the turbines come more into play and some less into play.
Yes, that's correct.
While this would have an impact on an important view out from Stoness, given the intervening distance from the present existing turbine, it's unlikely that the effect on the OUV would be significant enough to warrant an objection. It represents a cumulative impact of development, which breaks the skyline of the sensitive ridge lines. And then there's a without prejudice comment, and given this was in 2023, November 2023, that's not surprising because this application is on now. Were you involved with this letter?
Yes.
Again, the presence of a turbine on that ridgeline of itself wasn't enough to give rise to an objection from Historic Environment Scotland.
A turbine of that height.
Yeah, thank you. So what lies between us in terms of the turbines is not their existence as such, it's their scale and the appreciation of scale at distance.
And where they are in the monument setting, or the World Heritage Site setting.
Now, let me ask you about existing turbines in the location. We have there's a Holodike turbine we've discussed.
Yes.
And the Leuden Hill one we've discussed. They're relatively small. The Burger Hill turbines are taller.
Some of them are, some of them are not.
Yes. And if we look at the ZTV for Burger Hill, that's CD 136.
There's 6.13.
Sure, you're right. Yes.
Apologies, I'm just going to have to reload it. So, loading. Yes, I have that now.
In effect, I think it's from the Ring of Brodgar, correct me if I'm wrong, Burger Hill is pretty well imperceptible. Or is it Stones of Stoness? It's one or the other. Stones of Stoness. It's because of the angle, again, but from the Ring of Brodgar, they are perceptible and they clearly sit on top of the ridgeline.
I'd like to check visualization before
Yes, I think if you the best visualization, I think, because I don't think there is a cultural heritage visualization for that. Maybe
01113.
Great. I think that's CD 1. Sorry, yeah, 1.1 viewpoint 16. Right.
See Burger Hill on there. Well, actually, it is shown on
If you go to the
very last. It's a montage.
well, before we go to the last photo montage, if we go to the wireline, so that's the second. Certainly, if mine are printed off, as they are on computer, well, you got them in.
I do.
There's a wireline showing the Costa Head development, the proposed development, and then the Holodykes turbine. There's a double page on Burger Hill on the skyline.
It's the same page. Yes, I have that.
And that shows you their position with respect to the skyline, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
And the Burger Hill turbines clearly stand above the skyline.
3 of them do, yes.
And the Holodykes turbine does too.
It does.
And so, is there any reference that you can point the inquiry to, say in your report or in guidance documents or assessments of the World Heritage Site, which considers the extent to which they are a diminution of the World Heritage Site, Burger Hill? Distance.
I don't believe so, no.
Thank you. That was my understanding. You took us to the last visualization there. The Burger Hill turbines are at broadly the same distance away as the application turbines, aren't they?
I'm not sure. I don't know off the top of my head how far away Hill is.
Well, if we go back to that drawing we were looking at,
There's ZTV in the front.
the post development is 13.6 and Burger Hill is 13.2. Well, not the ZTV, but the wireline. You'll see that the distances are given on the wire.
Yes, I see that, yes.
So would you accept broadly the sort of? Yeah, I'm surprised you weren't aware of that. You can see how in the photo montage, the turbines for the proposal, even though at the same distance, appear much whiter against the same background sky than the Burger Hill turbines, which are almost invisible.
They are more visible. I would say the Burger Hill turbines are almost invisible. I can see them quite clearly on this photograph. And I think the proposal turbines, they do look more obvious. That's because they're superimposed digital facsimiles.
Yes. Yeah. If you turn back 2 pages from that, which a montage, you'll see another wire line, this time with a view to the south. And it shows the Hoy turbines.
Yes, it does.
And the hills of Hoy and how they would be in them.
Yes.
Just to make, there's no reference in terms of Burger Hill being a detractor, let alone a significant detractor from the current World Heritage Site experience. There's no reference in any of the documentation relating to the World Heritage Site that you want us to?
No, not on that, really discussed.
I want to come back to the topic of banks. We will ask that. In your report at paragraph 173, you refer to a publication by Colin Richards and Vicky Cummings, which is CD 1598. This is in the section where you're dealing with henges and stone circles in a generic sense. And I'll say that the Colin Richards, as I understand it, is a professor of archaeology at University of Highlands and Islands in Auckland. Is he not?
He is, yeah. Apologies, I wrote that document. Yeah, it's into the copyrighted version. I mean, so, yeah.
Details on that.
We are. Do you need a copy?
Copy. I added it to my period last night.
You have that. You're able to open it. So, just Colin Richards is a professor of archaeology at University of Highlands and Islands in Auckland, and was I don't know whether or not he was formerly professor of world prehistory at University of Manchester. Something you're aware of, aren't you?
We're not. I wasn't aware that it was previously at Manchester, but I know he's a professor at UHN.
So that's grateful. And Vicky Cummings is a professor of Neolithic archaeology, I understand, at the University of Cardiff.
That's right.
Yeah. And the book that you've taken from is a handbook on stone circles throughout the UK, and the extract that you provided is from the introductory extract, which deals with stone circles in a generic sense.
Yes.
That's what he said. And if we go to your para 173 and para 174, they scroll through the description and introductory paragraphs. My understanding is that if you turn to electronic page 5, which should be page 6 of the actual book, there's towards the bottom of the page a heading landscape survey. And that is where you've drawn your 4 bullet points from, which you include in your 173.
I'm sorry, I've got the wrong part of that. I've got the part the applicant submitted. Let me just get out the part of the I.
1598.
98. Yeah. Page 6.
So electronic page 5.
Oh, sorry. And
Which has page 6 on it.
yes.
And it's landscapes. It's that you see the title towards the bottom of the page, landscape survey, and this again. This is just you and I are probably aware of it, but for the reporters, orientation, the 4 bullet points you have in your report at page 173 seem to come from this section. If the first bullet point relates to access and visibility on approach, and if we see in the third line, it's firstly there is a question of access and approach.
Yes.
And then in the going over the page in the first full paragraph in the next page, there's another element of landscape placement to consider our views from the circle.
Whereabouts is that? Sorry.
So this is again on electronic page 5 at the top of the right, on the right hand page. So that would be page 7. There's a paragraph beginning another element.
Yes.
And that, I think, corresponds to your second bullet point, views out from the circle. And he picks up the point, is there a distant peak or significant hill that may be visible from the site? Now, there are no significant hills or distant peaks to the north, are there?
No.
But there is a significant hill to the south, or hills to the south, the hills of Hoy.
Yes.
I'm not going to go climb the hills of Hoy again with you. We've probably done that. Then if you go to the next paragraph down, finally, contemplate the overall effect of, sorry, there's a, in that paragraph, about halfway down, there's a sentence which begins, in addition, about 6 or 7 lines, investigate how the stone circles relate to other sites and monuments, particularly other stone circles and standing stones.
Sorry, I don't know. That's on book page 7 still.
Yes, still on page 7, still in that paragraph. It's about 7 lines down.
Yes, I see that. In addition, investigate. Yes.
And I think that's a factor that Mr. Lovekin placed significant emphasis on in his understanding of setting. Do you recall that? The interrelationship with other monuments. You don't? Then you just say you don't, whether you recall it or not.
I don't recall that.
Okay. But whether or not he made that clear, that could be another significant factor, is how they relate to other areas. And indeed, he goes on, if the stone circles were built in pre-existing settlements or monuments, such as the stones of Stenness and Ring of Brodka, consider how they interrelate. So that is a very significant factor in this case. It's a prime example he's given from all the stone circles in the UK. He's chosen these 2 that we're concerned with.
Yes, absolutely. There's a key visual relationship between sites.
And then there's the, finally, in the next paragraph, the overall effect of standing in the middle of the stone circle, and some sites appear very carefully located to orchestrate the view in every direction. And I think actually you say for the stones of Stenness, the view is all orchestrated to the north, but we'll come back to that.
I don't say that specifically. I think that's a key view for the stones of Stenness, but the circular surrounding those lines is also a key view.
I think that we'll come to how you relate to the height of the bank that you say existed. And then I think that we get to skyscape over on the next page, which is the top of electronic page 6, which would be page 8 of the document. Now, I presume you've put these 2 forward because they are, and they are certainly experts on stone circles, and this is the most modern publication on it.
Yes, I think that's a fair point to make.
And in paragraph 174 of your report, you say that these factors are useful to explain how stone circles were carefully placed. And you say that general views looking both from and towards them are equally important. I'd suggest you can't actually take that from the passages we've looked at. They're equally relevant, but whether they're important or not will depend on the particular context.
I think that's fair to say. I'd be happy to change to relevant.
Thank you. Yesterday, in evidence in chief, you took us to the evidence of he may not be a Mr. Ritchie, but Ritchie on investigations in the 70s.
Yes.
And I just want to not gonna ask you about them directly, but see how important the issue of a bank is in your evidence. If you go to, I'm just going to run through a series of references to make it clear why I'm asking these. In paragraph 165, you say the majority of henges conform to the same layout, an area of ground defined by a wide circular ditch enclosed by an outer monumental earthen bank.
Yes.
Now, just pausing there for a moment, I think it's agreed between us the Ring of Brodgar never had a bank. No evidence of a bank.
There's no evidence of Bank of God.
Do you make, we'll come on to that. In 167, you go on about the banks and ditches of henges are often monumental in their construction, far exceeding the practical requirements of enclosure.
Yes.
In the fourth line. And then 168, the banks are the horizon or physical realm of the builder's known world, therefore encapsulating or enclosing their social universe. Again, it's the importance of banks. And then if you go on to 189, and here we are looking particularly at the stains of the in 189, you say in the sentence beginning the second line, the circular form of the monuments reflects the locations within a natural bowl, with the enclosing bank apparently echoing the ridges in the distance. And then in 191, the henge's causeway entrance faces north, indicating the view northward would have been strongly framed by the henge's enclosing bank on either side. From within the henge, the only part of the horizon that would have been visible is that stretched to the north. So in fact, from within the henge of the Stones of Ness, you're saying the bank was so tall, you'd have only seen the horizon, that part which stretches north.
Yes.
And then in 192, last two lines on the page, the height of any outer bank would mean that the view north towards the ridge lines would be explicitly framed as the only visible area of the topographic bowl. The presence of the bank is an extremely important part of your assessment, is it?
Along with the circular form of the henge, the ditch, the orientation of the entrance.
Yeah. And did you?
On equal footing, I would say. Well, no particular importance out of those two.
I suggest you that's not actually a fair reading of your report. You took us to, with that in mind, could we go to 1572, please? This is the report of Jane Downs we went to yesterday. It's not just her kind of report, there are a number of other Wilson's writing. Jane Downs is a professor of archaeology at the University of Highlands and Islands in Orkney, and I think the director of the University of Highlands and Islands Archaeology Institute, is she not?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And she's someone that's undertaken digs in the site, as we'll come on and see.
Absolutely.
So, who's likely to know more about the Ring of Brodgar or the Stones of Stoness? Or yourself?
I believe Jane Downs was excavated at the Stones of Stoness.
So, who is likely to know more about the Ring of Brodgar and the Stones of Stoness? Jane Downs or yourself?
I think it would depend on the research that each of us had undertaken.
Have you done any digging at either?
No, I have not.
Have you? This is chapter 4 of a book that she's written.
Yes.
My understanding is an earlier chapter on the Stones of Stoness.
Right.
Are you aware of that? And have you read all of this chapter?
Yes, and that PDF I have, yeah.
So I'm going to take it a little bit more slowly than you took it yesterday. This is clearly the chapter dealing with the Ring of Brodgar. Yes, on electronic page 2, and I'm going to cover the ring of Brodgar as well. In assuming a high point along the spine of the isthmus, the topographic situation of the monument has always aroused curiosity. Why was a more level site not chosen? And she goes on to discuss that. There's no suggestion in this detailed consideration of the ring of Brodgar that the tilt towards the north was anything to do with trying to articulate the view to the north, as you suggest in your report, is that?
I'm not sure Baker is necessarily focusing on the setting of the monument in this paper. She's given it in summary there. She does point out that it has been erected on higher ground to straddle the ridge. The last sentence on that page, which implies that it's not on the top, it's just going to be off to one side, and it is. So,
But well, we discussed this in part yesterday, but certainly she, in her consideration of the ring of Brodgar, and I'm going to ask the reporter to form her own view as to whether it's a full consideration. She doesn't mention any particular relationship with the hills to the north, as opposed to any other hills, does she?
well, I don't believe she does, nor Hoy.
And she doesn't mention anything to do with the tilt of the monument towards the north as being of importance in terms of its relationship with the outer rim, does she?
Not explicitly, but she does say in the paragraph that you mentioned, she's questioning why a more level site was not chosen, which to my view would suggest that they have chosen a site that is not level for some deliberate reason as yet unknown.
She hasn't come up with the answer you've come up with. I'll come back to that. She discusses, just scrolling down, I'm looking at, for instance, at electronic page 6 at the moment, various trench excavation works, and then the raising of the stone circle. If we can go on to electronic page 16. My apologies. Can we go back to electronic page 14? She's here looking at the ring of Brodgar ditch, and the ditch has become important because that was the material from Ritchie that you took us to, was about excavations from a ditch in the bank, supposed bank next door to it. And she refers at the top of electronic page 15, just as was observed at the stones of Steness, Ritchie, 1976-10. Do you see that?
I don't, sorry, at top of page
Electronic page 15.
starting moreover to, yeah, just as observed, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, so that's a reference to the Ritchie document that you took us to yesterday. Bigful.
It's the same reference. I think the reference that I was referring to was Ritchie 1978.
Okay, well, we'll come on to that. Mr. Ritchie may have produced 2 series of reports on that. And she refers to the fill of the ditch and the trenches and the rubble. And then if you go on to the next page, 16, he talks about the stone rubble is replicated in the stratigraphy of the stones of Steness ditch, Ritchie 76, figure 3. If we turn to Ritchie which is 1591. And go to electronic page 19.
Just opening for me. What electronic page was?
It's electronic page 91. Sorry, 19.
19.
It's not really.
Yes, in there.
Yeah, we can see that that's figure 3 showing sections of the ditches.
That's right.
And what he says is the bank. Okay, so if we can go back to Downs, she's clearly had regard to a figure. Would you accept that the figure that she's referring to there is highly likely to be the same figure? Shows the stratigraphy of the stones of Stennes ditch.
Yes, that's fair to say. They're both figure 3.
Yeah, so she will have had regard to Mr. Ritchie's evidence.
Yes.
And she then considers the dating of the digging of that ditch. And then we come to the section that I think I took Mr. Lovekin to at the bottom of electronic page 18, which is headed the elusive outer bank.
Yes.
And then if we go to the top of the page, she's saying, given the huge amount of debris, mainly sandstone and rubble, removed while digging the ditches at both Stennes and Brodgar, it seemed almost inconceivable that if a bank had once existed at either site, no evidence would survive. And she's clearly had regard to the evidence you've referred to and reached a view, which is no doubt dealt with, and I think I've missed the reference, but there's an earlier chapter where she deals with the stones of Stennes, saying that the bank, it's inconceivable that the bank existed. Are you suggesting she's wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would defer to Graham Ritchie's interpretation of his own excavation. And I think what Jane Downs is saying there, she's talking about the stones of Stennes and Brodgar. And she says it seems almost inconceivable. So seems almost. The bank had once existed at either site, no evidence would survive. I think my reading of that sentence is to apply to, in terms of no evidence surviving. I think she's using that as a catch-all for both sites and not talking specifically, but setting that to one side. There's no doubt Graham Ritchie's excavation that he has interpreted the deposits that he excavated as the remains of a bank, and looking at those sections and looking at the plans that we saw yesterday and the drawing of a much more substantial bank and the fact that henges usually do have banks, I'd say that the evidence is quite compelling for this henge having once had a very substantial bank.
I suggest to you it's far from compelling. You see, that comment has to be read in the context of, if you go back to electronic page 3 of that document.
Yes.
You see at the top of the page, returning briefly to the stones of Stennes, it was suggested in the previous chapter that its location was predetermined by the presence of a large house structure. So,
I'm sorry, Mr. Finlay, electronic page 3, starting after the monument was taken.
at the electronic page 3, hopefully it's, top of the page begins with something briefly.
Sorry, is this in the Downs paper?
Yes.
I see. Yes, in there.
So clearly she'd written a whole chapter on the stones of Stennes. The comment in that I've just taken you to on electronic page 20 is not a throwaway comment solely in the context of the Ring of Brodgar. It's referring back to her. She's undertaken a study on Stennes and the Ring of Brodgar, and that's a conclusion she considers relates to both. Except that's a fair reading of the whole document, of which we only have this part.
I've not read the whole document, so I can't comment on the previous chapter. Jane Downs might have interpreted Graham Ritchie's results in that way. It's not how I interpret them, and I'm confident that it's not how many other methodologists would interpret them with specific blanket status.
Well, you say that, and then we go on to page 22, and electronic page 22.
Which document, sorry?
Sorry, still in 1572, Jane Downs. Yes, at the bottom paragraph, it's given the absence of evidence for an existence of an external bank around the stones of Sness or the ring of Brodgar. I'm just pausing there. That is clearly her conclusion, isn't it? Having carried out a study into both.
Yes, I think it was the sentence you mentioned when we were doing Sir Hawkins' examination in chief. And I think I said that I think it's Jane Downs' specific statements based on Graham Ritchie's excavation.
Well, were you aware of her drawing not just doubt, but reaching a conclusion as to the existence or otherwise of a bank at the stone of Sness in this document?
I will have read all of this paper, and many others, when preparing my inquiry report. And if I read that, I will have referred to Ritchie's excavation and seen that he.
Why didn't you draw attention to it as in your report as at least expressing doubt on the view that you place such reliance on?
Well, in my view, the archaeological evidence points to a bank being there, to the extent that Historic Scotland have reconstructed it as a visual marker on the ground to demonstrate to visitors that it is there. Agreed.
Mr. Durnham, why, knowing this is not just a guidebook for the casual tourist, this is a respected work of a respected archaeologist. You are aware that it was completely contrary to the basis of your evidence for the stones of Sness. Why did you not draw it to the reporter's attention?
Well, I don't think that academics, no matter how respected, are not vulnerable to people disagreeing with them, and academic papers are not gospel. So I don't think that particular point was.
I'm not suggesting you can't disagree with her, but you didn't refer to Ritchie in your evidence as supporting your theory. But this is refer to Ritchie's document, but not as supporting the theory for an existence of a bank. Refer to him for other reasons. You refer to Jane Downs to support your case in your document. That's why it's one of the Hess documents. But you don't even allude or draw the reporter's attention to what is a significant disagreement with you by a respected expert, do you?
I think the specific statement is not the relevance that you're ascribing to it with regards to this.
If we could then turn to 1451, which is a further extract from Richardson Cummins.
Yes, this one is in colour.
Yes.
Yes.
To prevent us having to come back to this again, if you could go first to electronic page 3.
Yes, and then.
Just to note that would appear to be a figure showing their appreciation, I would suggest, of the relevant settlements within the natural basin or bowl that forms which Ring of Brodgar and Stones of Stoness are at the heart of.
I would disagree with that. This map does not show, it shows some settlements, it shows a whole variety of monuments, and I think what Vicky Cummins and Colin Richards are depicting in this popular, not academic publication is the more prominent sites within that area that the visitor might want to seek out when they're there. I don't think that has any bearing on what might be significant in terms of what's in the top.
Well, just pointing out actually, so I don't have to come back to it. They then deal with the Ring of Brodgar, and on electronic page 4, they say, and there's a sentence, it's the second paragraph. They say, in this instance, the designation of Circle Henge is incorrect, as there is clear evidence that an external bank was never present. And they refer to excavations in 1973. This is the next paragraph by Colin Renfrew and by Graham Ritchie, and indeed to trenches being reopened by Jane Downs, who we've just looked at.
Yes.
They then move on to the Stones of Stoness, electronic page 7. And towards the bottom of page 7, they say the Stones of Stoness have been called a circle henge because the stone circle is enclosed within an inner ditch and a supposed outer bank.
See that?
And you know the word supposed. I'll come back to ask you about that in a moment. They then refer to Graham Ritchie's excavations in 1973.
Yes.
So irrespective of when his paper was, it appears excavations were in 1973.
Yes, that's true.
To examine the status of the ditch and bank, both ditch terminals were excavated, long trench was cut, a smaller trench was dug across the supposed bank to the west. Neither trench provided convincing evidence for a bank. Judging from the excavations at the bank at the nearby Maze High Grave Passage, a stone wall now removed is more likely. Now, that is, were you aware of that evidence when you put in the passage, the extract you did from this book?
No.
You haven't read that?
Not this part of that book, no.
I find that surprising because it's the most up-to-date book on Ring of Brodgar and Stones of Stoness upon which you rely for the in your report for the in-principle approach to appreciation of stone circles. You hadn't read that they clearly cast doubt on the existence of a bank, notwithstanding having regard to the Graham Ritchie's excavations.
What is it?
I'm surprised you weren't aware of that.
Right.
When did you have the whole book, or did you extract the extract from?
No. So I had an extract given to me, which is in the black and white.
You didn't have a look at the whole book?
No, I didn't have access to it, unfortunately.
This calls into doubt your view as well, doesn't it?
It does cast doubt on the supposed doubter.
Supports Jane Downs' view, doesn't it?
It does if we're referring to that specific sentence in the paper, yes.
And are you aware, have you put any material before this inquiry from any other archaeologists which supports your view? After the written paper that you go.
In the statement of significance for Stones of Stoness talks about the bank and the presence of the bank and it being reconstructed.
That's not evidence of people looking at the bank. That's a conclusion drawn from other people's work. I accept it's there, and I can deal with, but work of archaeologists, that's what you referred to. You said other archaeologists would have a different view. You have put forward no other evidence from other archaeologists to support your view, apart from Richie.
I'm willing to accept that, yes.
And if Jane Downs and Colin Richards and Vicky Cummings are correct, your view is incorrect.
If they're correct, again, maybe the four of us could have a chat about that in the pub, but I think I would always go back to the primary reference and the archaeologist who saw what they excavated with their own eyes and use that as my starting point.
You might do,
Other archaeologists might have different interpretations of that.
but they have different interpretations of the same evidence.
They do, but I don't think they're presenting any new evidence here that contradicts Ritchie's excavation.
But they've reinterpreted it.
They have, and archaeological evidence is open to interpretation.
And I mean, it doesn't. The absence of a hedge may be a different factor for the applicants to contend with, because it would mean that the surrounding ridge lines were fully visible throughout the whole of the hedge, as opposed to your suggestion. If we come back to it,
I'd just like to point out, it depends on what you mean by the absence of a henge.
sorry, not hedge, sorry, I mean bank. Because in paragraph 192, you said,
Sorry, that's my report again.
yes, your report, my apologies. You've assumed that the height of any outer bank would mean that the view of the ridge, the view north towards the ridge lines, would be explicitly framed as the only visible area of the topographic bowl when looking out from exiting the henge. There is no material to support a bank at that height, is there?
I think, and this is like sort of methodology in archaeology to compare sites with other parallels. There are lots of henges that survive, bearing in mind that these sites are 5,000 years. An earthen bank might have limited its arrival over the course of 5 millennia, or many hundreds of generations. That, as I've said in my report, these banks are often monumental in their construction. They go far beyond the requirements of defence that you might see in later sites where there be smaller banks or ramparts. And when it boils down to it, these ditches, as has been mentioned in the Downs paper, she points out that there is no bank, broad no evidence of a bank. All those hundreds, if not thousands, of tons of earth have to go somewhere, and banks can be removed over time. And again, there's compelling evidence for being a bank there, and I think given its width, given the size of the ditch, looking at other henges that have monumental banks and ditches, I think it is likely that the bank at Stones of Stennis would have been considerable height to the point of obscure the surrounding ridgelands. To frame that northern view.
And I listened to your answer. My question to you was: there's no evidence for a bank of that height, it alluded to by any expert archaeologist.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, it would mean if there was no bank, would mean that the ring, like the ring of Brodgar, was permeable in the sense of you could see, apart from stones, you could see out from the ring to the full extent of the ridge lines.
Yes.
Again, we're not suggesting there's going to be no impact of a turbine on those ridge lines, but it would be the focus on the view to the north would have gone.
No, that's incorrect. You would still have the ditch that has been constructed with the causeway, which is orientated to the north, and the several features within the Stones of Stennis that are orientated to the north, and then again with Barnhouse to the north of it, with features within it orientated to the north.
There's an orientation to the north, as indeed as Mr. Lovekin has accepted, but it's a question of whether the orientation is to Barnhouse or the loch or to the hills beyond it. But in terms of your evidence, the views to the north being framed by the bank, that would no longer be the case.
The bank is over here. obviously we're trying to frame that using the features that I've talked about and the standing stones that are still there would frame that view.
I think we've probably done enough on banks. Can I move to ridge lines? And
And can I'm just thinking about a break.
yes, I was going to suggest absolutely. I was getting bored of myself too. But
It's 11 and then.
I was thinking I was going to suggest that there was a good stop in about 5 minutes. Just in case anyone is worried, I'm going to spend as much time on the 4 more localized monuments. That's a much shorter element of examination. So I still think we're on. I should be finished by 12 o'clock with a break.
Okay. We'll run on for
Just one topic on ridgeline.
Okay.
Yeah, moving on from there, if that's we're grateful. I don't mind where you find your ridge lines, but I'm going to suggest that we probably should be referring to the most recently produced document 1215. I don't know whether you have that on your computer, which is the extract from the local plan map. If you don't, I think 14, is it 1415, is it? Yes.
2017 planning policy advice.
Yes, it's the same, but I think in order that we should go to the most relevant document, yes, it's electronic page 19 of that document. But as I said, I think I will look at it and from my purposes, it'd be easier to go to that document because the ridge lines are more clearly demarcated. So I'm going to ask you questions by reference to electronic page 19 of document 1415.
Yes, I have that.
Now, in landscape appreciation terms, you can have a topographic bowl. The topographic bowl or basin will exist whether you're looking at it in landscape terms or cultural heritage terms. A topographic bowl is a function of topography.
Yes.
If you look at the ridge lines to the southern eastern side, there are two small elements of ridge line to the east of the continuous line. They are clearly not in the topographic bowl that forms at which the ring of Brodgar is at the heart, are they?
I think they would, when you're standing within the topographic bowl, you would see them.
That's not the point. I accept that there are receding ridge lines that go beyond the topographic bowl. And I think that's the point that Mr. Lovekin made. He said that they would not appear in the topographic bowl, but will appear on a receding ridge line beyond it. That is an example of a ridge line which is beyond the topographic bowl. Would you not agree? A clear example.
I think those 3 to the southeast, if those are the ones that we, I think those 3 are. I would not say the 3, Hundland Hill.
I understand that. And then the ridge line immediately to the, and I'll try and get my orientation correct this time, to the northwest of the ring of Brodgar doesn't tell you anything about the existing or otherwise the topographic bowl. That little line on the isthmus between the two locks.
I think it could do in certain locations. So, for example, from the ring of Brodgar, your proximity to that ridge line would create a kind of false summit, effectively, where you wouldn't see the ridge lines beyond. I think that one's probably quite a different character to those 3 that we pointed out to the southeast, because that big long one in front of it, it's a very, very high hill. And I think no matter how far away you get from that hill.
So I think it displays a misunderstanding of topography. And the ridgeline may create a full summit, but it's not going to tell you anything about where the topographic bowl is. Because if you're standing at the ring of Brodgar, you're going to see, for instance, that long continuous line to the southeast. We will see the long continuous line to the west and indeed to the northeast. That false summit in your immediate vicinity is clearly not going to read as a part of the topographic bowl, is it?
No, I think it would from, if you were standing at the block, I think it would. Your conception of the topographic bowl changes as you move through it. And how it's defined, I think, to some extent, as it's illustrated by this example you're showing me, does change as you move through.
Well, I would suggest to you that's a wholly mistaken appreciation. And I would also suggest to you that the three ridge lines, one of which we sit on, or our application sits on, and Costa Head sits behind, which lie to the north of Greeny Hill, or to the ridge lines to the west of Greeny Hill, are receding ridge lines that read beyond the topographic bowl.
We're standing within the topographic bowl, those hills define it because you can see them. And the topographic bowl visually is defined in the sense of the World Heritage Site by those sensitive ridge lines. And those ones that you pointed out on either side of Greeny Hill, you can see.
You just accepted that because you can see ridge lines, they don't define the topographic bowl. So just because you can see the ridge lines, you've accepted, doesn't mean they form part of the topographic bowl. They can be receding ridge lines beyond it. Small point here, you don't accept the point that I'm suggesting is it would be obvious on site. Those lochs that like Swanee and Loch Harry, they drain to the north, don't they?
I'm sorry, which lochs?
Two lochs on either side of the ridgeline upon which the application site sits.
Loch Swanee and Boardhouse.
Is it? Yes, I thought it was Harry, but in fact there are three lochs in place. They all drain to the north, don't they?
I don't know.
When you're talking of bowl or basin, basin is usually a function of drainage as well. The fact that if they do drain to the north, which would be evident from any examination of an OS map, would indicate that they are in a different basin than that which the Ring of Broadcast is.
Perhaps in terms of geography, again, talking about the World Heritage Site and how the topographic bowl is visually defined. I think at various points it's defined by all the sensitive ridge lines shown in that.
But see, you're suggesting that topography changes depending on the purpose of consideration. I'm suggesting
no, I'm not.
Topography change, it stays the same. Your appreciation, your consideration of the importance of the topography may change.
The perception of it. I'm not saying that topography can change, but I'm saying your perception of it can change as you move through.
If you go to 1567. It's a Childersley study, and you're going to try and take this fairly swiftly. This is the one that was jointly commissioned by Scotland and it's on page 1877. All the concept that he had the wider setting of the world.
Sorry, Mr. Fisman, what electronic page was that again?
1877.
18. Yes, I'm there.
He was asked to set out what he thought the wider setting of the World Heritage Site in terms of landscape character types were. And he's clearly drawn that along the line from, including Greeny Hill and the one to the hill to the right of it, excluding the ridgeline upon which the application site sits.
He has, and this report, as you say, was commissioned by SNH and Historic Scotland jointly. and therefore covers both natural heritage, I would say, and cultural heritage. And this particular map is not about cultural heritage, I would say. It's about identifying different landscape character types.
But with respect, it's about the wider setting of the whole World Heritage Site and then specifying the landscape character types within that wider setting. That's both with respect.
Yes, I don't think that relates again to how you visually perceive the topographic.
So you say, and then the last, the difference between us is not how you perceive the topography, it's whether the topographic bowl exists with receding ridge lines beyond it or not. The importance of that difference will be important to deal with at the moment. The last extract I want to is CD 5.15.3. It's an extract from a book by Bradley that you put forward, The Significance of Monuments. And it's just electronic page 3 of that extract. There's a figure 39 which shows
That's that reference.
it's 15.3, electronic page 3, figure 39.
Don't have it. We can use what you got. Happy and look at the reference.
Yeah, it's just a short point. His appreciation of the basin, as he calls it, clearly broadly similar to that of David Tildersley that we looked at earlier, and would not include the site upon which the application site sits.
In terms of figure 39, how is
Yes.
If we were relying on figure 39, you'd be cutting it fine with the top of that map. You'd have to georeference them, I think, to see if Hundland Hill is or is not on that map. So I wouldn't take that as a given. But regardless of that, Richard Bradley, I can see he's talking about the enormous natural basin here, vaguely. He has not done, so the Atkins study from 2008, for example, I think it's over 80 pages long, very detailed study, which is what gave rise to the sensitive area and sensitive ridge lines. Assesses that in much more detail. And I'm not sure that that is what Richard Bradley is trying to do here. He's talking about that landscape in general terms, and he's illustrating the setting of those monuments and their situation within that bowl in general terms.
Amongst other things, Mr. Dernan, he's identifying what he considers to be the natural basin. The exercise of identifying sensitive ridge lines is a slightly different exercise from identifying the natural basin. Would you not agree?
We'll talk about it in purely topographical, geographical terms then, yes. But in terms of the cultural heritage, through that topographical is perceived, all the sensitive ridge lines contribute to that.
No one suggested otherwise, and I haven't suggested to you that the sensitive ridge lines don't contribute to the setting of the World Heritage Site. That's not the point I'm making. It's small, but I will suggest ultimately the important point is to proper understanding of landscape and visual influence. And that would be a convenient moment to pause.
Thank you.
And hopefully I'll be finished by midday.
I will take a 10-minute break and start again at 11:30. Yourself?
Thank you very much. I want to move on now to the particular impact, firstly from the ring of Broadway and then more briefly from the stations. And I'm going to draw attention to 3 paragraphs of your report in this regard, accepting your report has to be read as a whole. So first of all, 224. It's from the current landscape context. And you say, about 9 lines from the bottom, there's a sentence beginning in the middle of the page. This effect is entirely dependent. Do you have that?
Yes.
On the 2 peninsulas, both identical in orientation, being flanked by equally opposing locks and in turn an horizon that is undulating, yet uniform in its emptiness. And then unique landscape, etc., etc. The basic components of the monument setting have remained relatively unchanged since its construction. Again, reading short. And the topographical bowl readily appreciated and understood and experienced today as it would have been in the Neolithic.
Yes.
So that's then if you go on to 241, in terms of the impact of the proposed development, all turbines will be visible in the key view between Greeny Hill and Skeldale Hill. The hubs of 3 turbines would be visible along with their masts. The blades of a 4th turbine would be visible behind Greeny Hill. And then at 244, back at the bottom, about 4 lines up from the bottom, the scale under the heading scale of proposals, they would in turn erode the ring of Brodgar standing as a conspicuous ring of tall stones backdrop by an almost empty skyline. I do make it clear in 246 you do go on to talk about Burger Hill and that's later cost ahead. Now, what I would like to take you to first of all is a slightly say viewpoint which is let's say we have the same viewpoint. Let me take you some viewpoints in text. So the viewpoint is viewpoint 11, the landscape and visual. It's CD 189. It's broadly similar, in fact, to what we've looked at for cultural heritage. Indeed, it may be identical.
So it's 189.
1.089, yeah.
Don't seem to have that on my list.
Well, my apologies if I left that off.
What's the viewpoint number, Mr. Fry?
It's viewpoint 11 for landscape and visual impact. But I have a feeling it's the same viewpoint that we went to earlier for one of the viewpoints. I don't think there's any difference.
Well, actually, I've got the figure numbers on the actual visualizations here, so if you can give me to me.
I did visualizations, but if we go to the second page, which should be the view north, it's a split page. It's a view north towards Gloucester Head and the bridge development, Holodykes, Turban and Burger Hill.
629B.
Yes.
Yes, I have that.
And landscape and visual chapter helpfully giving letter references to the figures. Yes. I just want one can see before you get to the skyline, there's clear evidence of significant modern built development in that view north, as you will be able to recall yourself from.
Yes, there is evidence of modern built development. Yes.
And
Could say significant necessarily, but there's evidence of it there.
And the field patterns are all post-medieval field patterns insofar as there are fields.
I don't think I'd go so far as to say all of the patterns are. I think that's likely, but it could well be that some of these fall where their field boundaries.
Yeah. And then if you go down to what will be 6.29D, we have a particularly sunny view south.
Yes.
With the Hoy turbines there showing, and then if you go to then you go to 629E, just bearing in mind your comment about the blade tip of the fourth turbine being visible, that would be turbine 1 on this. And we can see where the others lie. And then finally, there's the photo montage at 629F. And again, it's a comment as to whether the Burger Hill turbines are then certainly not as visible as the proposed turbines in that photo montage for the reason I think you indicated earlier. I want to take you to that because with that in mind, you can put that away and turn up CD 108. In fact, I may have also not have given you, in which case I apologise.
I have a feeling I might have that one. It's not actually. Just check. Yeah, figure 6.2.
So it's a CD 108, which is the Landscape and Visual Impact Assessment chapter. It's when you're there, if you go to electronic page 74.
CD 108.
No, 1008.
Okay, so download that now.
So this is written with reference to the viewpoint we've just been looking at.
Right.
And I'm going to ask you first of all about paragraph 61295, which is the understanding of the baseline. So it says the view is characterized by the presence of 36 stones which form a strong focus in the foreground of the view, which I imagine is fairly uncontentious. The setting is defined by the.
Sorry, what page is this on, Mr. Finlay?
74.
74. Thank you.
There's the reference to setting being defined by the water surrounding both sides, which makes this narrow band of land unique in appearance. The broad extent of the loch basin means the views are fairly expansive, contained by the moorland hills to the east and south and the coastal hills to the west. In general terms, that's a fairly accurate description of what you can see in those photo montages, is it?
It says the setting is defined by, this is an LVIA assessment, which assesses a completely different set of criteria to cultural heritage. So no,
let's say the setting, if we say delete the words as defined by, certainly includes the water surrounding both sides. Would you be happy with that from the culture?
It includes the water on both sides, yes.
And then to the north, the gently undulating landform provides some enclosure with the coastal hills beyond seen as a distant feature. Now, you accept that's how they appear visually, that the north, which is what we're concerned with, the coastal hills appear as a distant feature.
They do, yes.
Thank you. While patches of moorland vegetation occur across the hilltops, the predominant land cover is improved pasture enclosed by a geometric pattern of fences or stone dikes, creating a lone open landscape with practically no tree cover. Again, that's reasonably accurate.
Yes.
And then settlement occurs at intermittent farmsteads, dispersed rural properties, as well as some small nucleated settlements visible along the eastern side of the Loch of Harry.
Yeah.
The influence of larger scale developments is limited to Burger Hill Wind Farm, 13.2 kilometres, partially concealed, and the masts of the Keeley Lang Hill to the southeast.
I'm not sure if I would agree with that. That's talking about influence in terms of LBIA, and there are other features, landscape that are visible from that point that would be some cultural heritage.
In terms of archaeological, larger scale developments relevant to cultural heritage, and we probably include the Holodite turbine and the wooden bill turbine. Are there any other larger scale developments that are currently visible in that view that you would consider relevant from a cultural heritage viewpoint?
I can't do the visualization from it, so correct me if I'm incorrect here. I think Burger Hill is visible.
But we've included Burger Hill. It's referred to.
That's what it is. My apologies. So you have this is from the which is Holodike is visible.
We've covered Holodike, Loudon Hill,
Okay.
and Burger Hill.
Right.
So, what apart from that?
Mentions the two masts on Keeley Lang Hill. I'm not sure if it's visible from the Ring of Broad specifically, but from I think it must be the mast at Broomfair.
And just so the reporter has that, if you turn to paragraph 279 of your report, you refer to where there's been a flare mast, and the reporter can pick that up from there. It's the bottom of page 64. Yes. Indeed, I think to that extent, even now, going back to your 224, the horizon is not uniform in its emptiness, is it?
I believe it is in relative terms. So if you look around on the horizon, there is almost nothing on the skylines apart from the developments that we just discussed. And I think, it's not in any way populated with lots of development. Those ridge lines are empty. You look around them and they seem empty up from these few developments that we discussed.
It's not uniform in its emptiness. There are material developments, but we're looking at the horizon, the skylines.
Yes, I
They are
think
breaken up. And when high and cost ahead, if they are built, they're consented at the moment. If they're built, they would also impact on that supposed emptiness.
they would impact upon it. I think we said as much, and again, in our responses that have been lodged. But I stand by what I said there, that the horizon is undulating yet uniform emptiness. There are proposals on those horizons. I think at the moment the number relatively few, and they're quite evenly spread around that horizon. There's no particular concentration, I would say, other than the turbines of Burger Hill. I think that lens, that's what I would mean by uniformity.
Okay. Well, uniform in its.
Yes.
We now understand what you mean by uniform. To interpret your phrase accordingly. If we then turn over the page in CD 1.8, paragraph 612-100.
Yes.
I'm not asking about magnitude of change from a landscape and visual perspective. It's just a commentary on what you can see and how things will appear, I want to put to you.
Okay.
So if you start with the fourth line down, just to refer to it because it's introducing the sentence. The low part of the rating would relate to the combination of separation distance between the viewpoint and the proposed turbines, which would mean they appear as relatively distant features. Do you accept or not that the turbines in visual terms would appear as relatively distant features?
I don't know what the rating.
Well, that's a reference to the rating of the magnitude of change as being medium low.
Oh, I see.
But it's which I'm not asking you about.
I see.
It's the appearance of them as relatively distant features that I'm commenting.
Right.
Do you accept that?
Yes.
But as I understand it, notwithstanding their relatively distant features, you still suggest on numerous occasions that they will dominate the view.
Yes, absolutely.
I suggest to you that's a fundamental misapprehension about how domination can occur.
I would disagree with that. Regardless of how far away sensitive ridgelines are, they are at a distance from the component parts of the World Heritage Site. I would say, in fact, that distance is in part what defines their significance, as we talked about, I talked about yesterday. This is a very flat, expansive, open landscape. Mr. Lovkin compared it with Avebury, which is a slightly much more enclosed, as he puts it, topographic bowl. This one is unusual, unique in being so wide and open, having those wide, distant views. And I think it is that distance lends itself to the significance of the sensitive ridgelines. In relative terms, proposals discussing here do dominate that key factor of the World Heritage Site.
Well, we can disagree about that, and I maintain my position that. Do you not explore that there just a little bit further? Do you accept that distance will have an impact on the ability of something to dominate something else? Is it a relevant factor in assessing domination?
I think it would, from my perspective, in terms of assessing heritage assets, it would depend on that specific asset. So I think distance is a factor, but sometimes an asset that a monument might be, one asset might be more sensitive to closer changes, one might be more sensitive to distant changes, depending on that asset.
So just by way of an example, sometimes when you're considering the concept of domination, a stage below that is something being prominent in the setting, whether it's from a heritage viewpoint or a landscape. Something that is prominent is not dominant, but is clearly something more than recessive. Just trying to calibrate an impact.
Are you saying this in general terms, or is that
just in general terms of that approach? Because
not grading isn't written down in.
No, but neither. I don't think anywhere is there a definition of dominance, is there? Which is a word you use.
I thought you were.
No.
A definition of dominance just.
No, I'm not giving you a definition of dominance. I'm asking you the question, Mr. Dernan. Have you provided a definition of dominance?
No.
It's a term you're quite happy to use.
Yes.
It's only because what the reporter at Merrimblow said about the proposed wind farms there was that they would be prominent.
Right.
They're smaller, but they're much closer. They would have been much closer had they been permitted.
Can't recall exactly the distance of Merrimblow.
5 or 6 kilometres.
Okay, then that's closer.
Yes. That's it. We'll come back to dominance briefly in due course. Then, if we go on in that sentence, so back to 612-100, they would be seen contained behind intervening ridge lines, which means they would appear as part of the more distant landscape. Do you accept that as what would be seen? Yes. Do you? And with only 3 times turbines readily visible, which would occupy only a small proportion of the wider view. And just so that, to put that comment in context, can I take you back to the previous paragraph, 612.99, referring to the wireline and the photomontage, shows that while all four of the turbines would be theoretically visible, one turbine would be barely discernible owing to the fact that it would be seen as a small tips behind intervening landform. Do you accept that the blades of its turbine one would be barely discernible?
Yeah, I think it would be much less discernible, certainly. And yeah, when it's moving, you're just going to see a turbine blade appearing periodically.
At 13 to 14 kilometers, it's going to be barely discernible, if at all.
I think it would be discernible. For example, the turbines in Burger Hill, I do recall being able to see quite clearly turbine blades clicking over the horizon.
Well, that's interesting in itself, but I'm suggesting to you that barely discernible is correct. And in terms of impact on a ridgeline, a sensitive ridgeline, and I was looking at the ridgeline as a whole, if you're standing at the ring of Brodka, it's correct that they would only occupy a small proportion of any view. The further away you go, the smaller proportion of a view of a 360-degree view, which is what we're talking about here, the smaller proportion of that view they will occupy.
Yes, that's correct, but I would still maintain that regardless of the proportion that they take up in this particular instance, they still do have a significant impact on key factors of setting for the Ring of Brodgar, both as a scheduled monument and as an important part of the World Heritage Site.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'm not suggesting you're going to change your view. Well, sticking with your report, if I can turn briefly to 229. Yes. You say in the last sentence, the view northeastwards in an arc from the north to the southeast, where the sense of panorama is felt most strongly. Is that dependent upon your understanding of the existence of this is Ring of Brodgar. That is entirely different from the case that Historic Scotland put forward at the Merrimblow inquiry, isn't it?
I don't have the Merrimblow report up, but I do remember that we were at length yesterday. And I think I remember saying repeatedly that report proposals were from 2008, assessed on completely different forms of policy and guidance, and our understanding of setting the way it's articulated has evolved since then.
We're talking about a Neolithic site that's been in existence for how many thousands of years?
Around 4,000 or 5,000.
Yeah, and less than 20 years since that decision.
Yes, but in planning terms, it's a lifetime, I would say. Yes. Always starting to feel like it.
I hate that I'll bring this current lifetime to an end soon. Stains of Staines, very briefly, I don't want to go back through this whole. It's generally the same comments I wish to make. I just check whether I want to. Yes, just one comment I wanted to ask you about paragraph 211. We can put that document away. We may not. We'll use one more. Put this in context. You referred to the Burger Hill turbines in the previous paragraph, and here you're looking at proposals that well, Costa Head and the Leaden Hill turbine. And you say at the end of that section, the proposals at Nist Hill being taller and closer than Costa Head, which they are, would appear far larger, maybe a contention between us, than either the replacement Leaden Hill or the Costa Head turbines, increasing this already significant impact further still. So my understanding from that is you think there's a significant impact on the setting of the stones of Stoness already.
Yes.
Or there would be if Costa Head was built.
Yes.
Notwithstanding that HES did not object to Costa Head.
Is it not? Did not object to the Leaden Hill turbine either. I would point out that we comment on planning applications, consultations. They are reliant on the information that is supplied with them, and those would give you a understanding that is ultimately an indication of what will appear in reality, and you make an informed judgment based upon that. And the Leaden Hill turbine, now that it is constructed usefully, I would argue, demonstrates that one turbine, even less than half the height of the 4 proposed, does have quite a significant impact on the stones of Stoness, both that scheduled monument and a component part of the World Heritage Site.
And the Costa adds to that significant effect, or is the significant effect only deriving from the Leaden Hill turbine?
I think if the significant effect is there, you then cumulatively adding to that where Costa Head constructed.
Because that would appear we still don't know what Costa Head is, how that's going to appear. It would appear that, notwithstanding it, you can anticipate a significant impact from Costa Head. HES didn't object to it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a significant there already as a result of Leaden Hill turbine. And I think, in black and white terms, if you put other turbines into that very significant impact, you are cumulatively adding to that significant impact.
Well,
and I accept the HES didn't object to Costa Head.
I suggest to you that Leaden Hill turbine doesn't have a significant impact. Do you suggest the Leaden Hill turbine dominates?
I wouldn't go so far as to say that, but I do think that it exerts a distracting presence on the skyline, and a number of key views for the Ring of Progress. Well, sorry, the Stones of Stoness. One key view, but different key factors of its setting, mainly as we've discussed, Henge Causeway, its relationship with, very clear relationship with Farmhouse, if you effectively got a big arrow pointing north there. But also the visitor experience. So the car park is to the south of the monument. Visitors enter through the gate, can see Leaden Hill turbine behind the standing stones, as I did, can then move to the interpretation panel, see Leaden Hill turbine, as I did, from there, and then walk towards the standing stones and move around them and walk out of that Northern Causeway, all the time seeing this one turbine that is really quite prominent, I would say, on the horizon.
And do you say the Burger Hill turbines have a significant impact or not?
No, I wouldn't say that they do. I think they're certainly visible, but they're not in. Well, they are present in a key factor of the monument setting, which is the circular enclosure in the natural amphitheatre of the surrounding ridge lines. They do have an impact on that key factor. I wouldn't say that it's.
They're bigger, they're taller than Leaden Hill, aren't they? Some of them are.
Some of them
are visible to hub height. They sit above the skyline. If Leaden Hill has a significant impact, surely consistency is important in view. Burger Hill would too. They're in the same. If you're looking north from you're describing the visitor experience you just described, you wouldn't just be looking at Leaden Hill, you'd pick the Burger Hill turbines up in the same view, wouldn't you?
No, I would disagree with that. Burger Hill would be to the east and the right of your view, and it's not on that very clear north to south alignment with the Henge.
But Mr. Lovekin was accused of tunnel vision before I'm going to return the compliment to you. Yeah, the reporter reached ranges and that. Now, only one question on the 4 other monuments, because I think we've been through them at length. I want to take you to the reference this to this statement of agreed matters, which is 13.1. You may have it, but it's the definition of significant adverse impacts on the integrity of setting. And I'm interested in understanding, appreciation, and experience.
Right.
So you start by accepting your point that, well, there are 2 stages in it. You first of all have to identify setting.
Yes.
And impacts on setting. We have the guidance on HES guidance on setting, or on ancient, well, setting generally, but ancient ones.
Yes.
And then you have to look at impact on the integrity of setting. So we get to the stage where I think we're both that, albeit for different reasons, that there are significant impacts on the setting of all these 4 monuments.
Yes.
We're then looking at understanding, appreciation, and experience of an asset. You know, if you're looking, as you and Mr. Milne took us to, up to either the Nistil burial mound or the Hundland enclosure from land to Loch Shore land to the west, for example.
Yes.
You wouldn't actually be able to make out the burial ground. You would be able to see the location. Obviously, it's visible, but you wouldn't be able to see it as or distinguish it from any other landscape feature, like likewise Hundland Hill, would you?
Is this looking back towards
Yes.
the west? I think from that lower lying land, say we were taking the visualization from Hundland Mound, you wouldn't see Hundland Hill enclosure, I don't think, in terms of that, seeing the actual bank. Certainly where it is located would be perfectly visible. And likewise, I think with Nist House burial mound, it's reasonable to assume that I think that monument could be visible from down, even if it's not. I don't think that materially changes how that factor of its setting is important.
Well, I suggest to you that the Nistil burial ground would just appear like a natural undulation in the ground, of which there are many in that location.
I don't think it would. I think from certain positions in the landscape, obviously you appreciate this clearly when you're close to it. An artificial mound with clearly defined edges, but from greater distances, for example, where the monument is skylined, it is very clear as a hump on an otherwise gently sloping hillside.
Well, we can perhaps agree to disagree about whether how clear that hump is, but in general terms, and perhaps we can just to get to the core of the issue, concentrate on the Hundland Hill enclosure. In terms of experiencing an asset from the lower ground, if you can't make it out, how does your experience of the asset, not the setting, but the asset, if you can't see it, can you experience it?
I think you can, yes. I think part of experiencing that asset, both in the past and today, is the experience of going up to it.
No, you're looking at it from the ground. It's the view on. It's when you're sitting down, you can't see it, you can't make it out. You're not going up to it.
Right.
Do you experience it?
I think you do, yes. I think I was in that landscape and knowing that it's up there, and as it's today, yes, I would get a sense of experience moving around that landscape, and to the top of that hill that's locally quite prominent. And regards to people in the past, the people that occupied and used that site, I think they would be very much experiencing that monument as well as their wider settlement lands.
That is.
And I mean that.
I think the test is my understanding. It's looking at appreciation of it primarily today, but you caveated your
I think
answer.
it is that. It doesn't say that in this.
The setting,
I don't.
no, the setting, like setting, the understanding, appreciation, experience of an asset are retained. So the Neolithic man or woman is not being asked to contemplate a wind turbine on top of or in the vicinity of their enclosure. That is what someone today is. But I want to come back to, because in your answer you said knowing there is a monument on top of the hill.
You might.
So does understanding, appreciation, experience depend upon knowing there's an asset there?
No, absolutely not. I think I might have said this yesterday, but the visibility of an asset and is understood, appreciated, and experienced is in no way dependent on its visibility. I think.
Just pause there for a moment. If you don't need to know there's an asset there, how can your experience of an asset be impacted if you can't see it and don't know about it?
I think the means that the asset is still there and its setting still exists, and therefore it can be understood, appreciated, and experienced. Those inherent aspects of it do still exist and are still there.
I suggest you're simply wrong as to that.
Okay, I would disagree with that.
I think,
unequivocally.
and Mr. Lovekin would disagree with you too. I think we examined that. That's what the cranogs are obviously there. You can see that their function is readily apparent on the artificial islands as opposed to the other island in the lot, which is not as a home.
Yes.
And further out. I'm going to leave the reporter to form their views as to that. Those are all my questions for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. Nearly there. I've only got a few questions for you. Major inquiry reports.
Yeah.
Time I'll let you know the other. 162. So I have a question in relation to Hundland Hill, and I'm just looking for clarification. It's paragraph 62, and you say the monument would be encircled by the turbine, and also that it would appear encircled by the turbines.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Finlay.
Sorry.
Can concentrate with me.
Sorry, I'm trying to whisper quietly.
In paragraph 63, you talk about an encircling effect. So I just want to know what you meant by these different descriptions, and would you refer them to be the same thing, just language, or if there's any difference I should note?
I see what you're saying. So I think in physical, spatial terms, the monument is being circled by turbines. For turbines, I would argue less than three cardinal directions out from it. Obviously, that also results in an experiential effect of encirclement, both infused towards it. So there are, in fact, them all in that paragraph 62 visualizations. I think they demonstrate quite clearly that in every direction towards Hundland Hill, there's a sense of encirclement. And I think, more particularly, that would be very viscerally felt, that encircling effect. Through the monument, moving around the monument, and or moving into it or out from it in any direction.
Yeah. Next question relates to the comments that you made on aviation.
Yes.
are in paragraphs 209 and 245. Um, You may not need to go there, if you want to refer to the chapter, the appendix in the EIA report on aviation, but we're going to go there, so it would be paragraph 209. So you say that the presence of aviation lights will draw the eye to the turbines, increasing distraction and competition. It's likely this initial impact will be passed on over the past conditions on sailing for and the storms. Program. I just want to know whether that you took into account the visual assessment of visible aviation lighting in appendix 6.3, the EIA report, in reaching your view. It's document 1.124.
Right. Just going to jog my memory.
Yeah.
Maybe did because I remember reading about the different if I'm pronouncing them correctly, intensities. You wanted a few points actually from this.
Then I was trying to understand with page 17 of 18. Looking at parts around 5 kilometers, obviously
Yes.
I'm talking about Mulga and Stonestown House, the distances would be greater than that.
So you want to search my report just to check something. I think to aviation lighting, it's not going to be distant beyond 5 kilometers. Yeah, with regards to the stories of CNS, I don't think we can be able to take that position for both of those assets.
Don't think you refer to impact of aviation lighting in relation to the closer schedule movements. Doctors, we have enough question. That you
I see that, yeah, so it is for both. Yeah. Did you say it was saying that not for the scheduled monument? I can't recall actually if we were asked just about the scheduled monuments or the.
I think it just generally had said impact of aviation, but lighting, just because I was interested in the views of
Yes.
parties on that. I've noted your conclusion, and I just wanted to be clear what the context was. But I'll be taking account of what the EIA says in relation to others as well. Thank you. One potential further question, and it's the question that I put to Hundland Rivet in terms of the Orkney Local Development Plan and NA-330-001.
Yes.
And you'll recall that I asked questions about what the views were on the applicant in terms of whether the proposal accorded with the various clauses in that. Dr. McLeod-Rivets indicated that she didn't feel that she wanted to answer that. Do you want to answer that? Just to give you that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I would say that
We need to get, we need to get policies.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's the actual sort of working through the
2017. So was the
12.2 of
12 to. Policy 7D first of all.
just
Policy D1 says proposals for wind energy developments, small scales, will be assessed against the following factors to ensure there will be no significant adverse individual cumulative impacts. This historic environment. So obviously it's just one part of consideration that I have to have in relation to a policy stepping in terms of environment. The historic environment Scotland. Do you consider that it accords with that? The proposal would accord with that requirement of policy D1.
it should be assessed against.
Well, it's requiring. I will have to assess it against that policy, but it's whether it's the wording is that do I consider that there will be no significant adverse individual or cumulative impact on range of factors, one of them being historic environment. Based on historic environment Scotland's evidence, the proposal would accord with that.
Right, I see. See specific policy. I'm really feel comfortable commenting on it as local policy, just in terms of its wording.
Okay. Fine. I just want to give you the opportunity. And policy 8. And what we were looking at. Interested in policy 8B 1 second. Paragraph under that. So again, with Miss Sidgwick, we broke down the applicant considered that it would break the skyline on sensitive ridge lines. We thought that it would be acceptable because demonstrated that the development would not have significant impact on either the OUB or the setting of 430 site. So I suppose and just then, do you want to work through your view from Environment Scotland's point of view in terms of compliance with that law?
So yeah, specifically the second paragraph.
Yes, so the second part. The first one is about development within the inner sensitive zone, so that the proposal wouldn't affect that.
And am I right in saying that we'd agreed that paragraph should be read as a whole?
Yes, the unless
Yes.
applies to both the preceding clauses. Should be much.
HES's view that has not been demonstrated.
So the AGS, do you consider it breaks the skyline?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
And then in terms of the
Oh, I see
other,
here. Yeah. Yes. And then, yeah, wouldn't say the that's
obviously takes you on, but it's helpful so we have the
material solution.
it's just really in terms of the policies. I think I've got plenty of evidence in relation to the various material considerations and the exceptional circumstances in terms of the PF4 policy on scheduled monuments was done through written submission. So again, I've got used parties on those. That's all my questions for you. Let's hand you back over to Mr. Milne for any re-examination.
Thank you. Some documents. Just a few questions for you arising out of the questions that Mr. Findlay asked you and the answers that you gave. There was a discussion yesterday about, in the context of the World Heritage Site, core setting, wider setting, etc. I wonder if you could go to the ICMOS guidance 15.32. Okay, page 14 and figure 3.2. Mr. Null, just look up a moment. Actually, page 15. So. Medical documents. The see a flow diagram. Figure 3.2, it says example of heritage property orange, its buffer zone grey, and interdependency on its wider setting yellow. Just one any comment to make on how useful this diagram is in terms of explaining these differing concepts in the context of World Heritage Sites.
I think it's kind of limiting the described sites being World Heritage property, and then the buffer zone being a layer of protection to World Heritage Site. Intellectualizing those within the surroundings around the World Heritage Site, contributing to this OEP.
And then take you to document 15.3. This is Bradley, 1998, the significance of monuments. page 3 and figure 39, and you commented on what you thought could be taken from that figure. Going to the previous page, page 2, we see in the second full paragraph that begins Richard's interpretation. The author of this publication goes on to say, not only do the stones of Stenness and the ring of Rodger represent a transformation of the principles of order seen in Arcadian settlements and tombs, they also echo the characteristic features of the surrounding landscape. Each is located on the end of a narrow isthmus with an extensive system of locks on either side. Then the specific reference to figure 39, behind these, there is a mountainous skyline.
Yes, I see that.
The author goes on to say both monuments are completely permeable, with the result that it is possible to look out from the enclosed area across the water to the high ground on the horizon. The features of these monuments copy that basic design. The height of the sandstone monoliths, the height of the distant hills, and the circular plan of each of these enclosures reflect the location with a natural bowl ringed on every side by higher ground. Even the importance of the locks seems to be reflected in the ditches dug around these enclosures, but these appear to have held water. This may account for the unorthodox character of both of these monuments. This, in a way, psychologists can never explain. Is this a fuller explanation, in your opinion, as to what Mr. Bradley is saying regarding the topographical ball?
Is there a fuller explanation to you?
Is this a fuller explanation? Does this put figure 39 in context?
Yes, certainly. Yes, he's describing in that paragraph what he's illustrated in 39. Okay, length through that paragraph.
Thank you. Mr. Findlay also took you through some previous decisions on which Historic Scotland or Historic Environment Scotland had made representations. He referred to Cost Ahead, Quanterness Hoy, Burger Hill. I had noted you had said during your cross-examination that you wanted to come back. Now, you obviously limited to responding to Mr. Findlay's questions, so that's a clear ground rule. I wasn't sure if you had taken the opportunity to say what you wanted to say, or if there are any points of clarification in response to the answers that you gave to Mr. Findlay that you would like to go through now.
I think my opinion, which is expressed in my report, is that there's a risk of the sensitive ridgelines being, the lower ridgelines specifically, being cumulatively filled with wind energy developments. All of which have been consented, specifically they are Costa Head, Hoy, and Quanterness. I think, having looked at the visualizations supplied with this application, I think that's clearly demonstrated for all of those wind farms in specific visualizations, which I can make reference to. They're all shown in wireframes, and I think that supports my view that those lower ridgelines would be cumulatively filled if those were to receive those development.
There's a discussion between you and Mr. Findlay about existing effects from already constructed developments and the proposed Cost Ahead development. Does the existing baseline justify, in your opinion, further development this hill?
No, certainly not. I don't think that's any justification for proposals. I think if HES are saying there's a baseline impact there by this existing development, I don't see how it could be justified in saying the situation is bad, therefore make it a bit worse. You know, that doesn't add up to me.
Inevitably, during re-examination, we're jumping about between documents. Ma'am, please
Really?
hold on to your laptop. Downs 15.72.
So, Mr. Finlay was referring to,
Yes.
yes, that.
I think we're avoiding using her title because we don't know it. So don't mean any disrespect.
I think she's professor.
Professor.
She would be at the very least doctor. Seems doctor.
Let's give her the title professor. PDF page 2, Mr. Findlay took you to that document, so 1572. Is Professor Downs in this text around situating the ring of Brodgar, is she undertaking a setting analysis?
No, I don't think so. I was actually wanting to highlight that. I think she's undertaking a different exercise here. This is an academic exercise, exploring the understanding of Ring of Brodgar intellectually. She's not analysing the setting or trying to define the setting in terms of planning. And I think it's really that I draw on academic resources informing my view in terms of the impacts and the assessment of the setting in a planning sense. I do that kind of through the lens of, as we've discussed, the managing change guidance and having in my mind the relevant policies, which Jane Downs, I don't think would even have crossed her mind, or her co-authors have crossed their mind in this report, because it's a completely different.
Thank you. That's clear. There was Professor Downs asked a specific question, which we see at the bottom of PDF page 2, which Mr. Findlay, I read through this section. Why was a more level site not chosen? Mused Tom and Tom in 1978. Clearly, visibility and prominence were determining factors. Should not the Great Circle have been erected on higher ground to straddle the ridge? Is that question, why was a more level site not chosen, relevant in terms of undertaking an assessment of setting? When you're considering setting, would you look at the factual position on the ground, the geography in terms of the word of the immediate location of the Ring of Brodgar?
Look at that and making my setting assessment.
Yes.
Yes.
That's rather suggesting an answer.
Well, of course I would in there. Names there I'm going to be looking at. Surroundings in there I'm going to be looking at.
Can you describe the physical features of the Ring of Brodgar in terms of I'm asking you to comment on evidence regarding the tint of the Ring of Brodgar.
I want to refer to the board here. If I could just
Please do.
Limestone, can you repeat? I thought your question.
I do have some concern about this because my understanding is Mr. Mills just established that the question of why a level site wasn't chosen isn't relevant to setting. He's now suggesting that the tilt is relevant to setting. With respect, that's a cross-examination, having got his witness to say one thing and then ask him to say something else.
So what I'm asking Mr. Durnan to do is to explain what you saw in the site visit in terms of the tilt of the vodka.
So the Broadmoor Peninsula that's on, it's a low compact peninsula. The ring of Broadmoor is kind of constructed on the eastern shoulder of that ridge, with its westernmost end close, if not on, the spine of that ridge. So when you're standing at around the western end of the ring of Broadmoor, very clear sense of it being in this circular amphitheatre with locks on either side and landscape beyond and in the sky. But as you move around the circle and move to the eastern end, the view westwards then closes up and the stones start to kind of jut up directly into the sky. There's no land behind them at that point. And the view west is very restricted. And your eye, I would argue, is naturally drawn to what is this quite expansive panorama from the north to the southeast. And if knowing that it's framed by two locks, your perception, having been deprived of that view west, then very much focused on the kind of half of that view that you then have over the loch of, right, I think is the eastern loch, and then the landscape beyond that. So very much the tilt of the monument, I think, very much focuses a view in that arc of view.
Why is that relevant to an assessment of setting?
So I think that the fact that it's been constructed on that tilt is a deliberate choice by the monument's builders. It's not well, it is a humpbacked peninsula. It's a relatively flat landscape. They could very easily have constructed it on the spine of the ridge, but they haven't. They've constructed it on the eastern side, and I think that speaks to that view eastwards clearly being of some significance because that was a deliberate choice by the monument's builders. And I think conversely, my own opinion is that I think Hoy is visible as part of that circular view from the western extent of the stone circle. So I don't think Hoy in and of itself is a focused part of the monument setting in any way. When you see the circularity of the monument, it's how that is reflected in the circularity of its surroundings, I think, that is a key factor of the monument setting from there. To my view, there's no deliberate connection with the monument's construction at Hoy.
Thank you. And just to, I'm afraid, end on the subject of banks. There's also been much discussion over the past 2 days about banks, and we have parties' respective positions on that. We're looking at the stones of Stenness. If there is academic disagreement to a matter such as this, is it relevant to assessment of setting and to Historic Environment Scotland's view regarding whether a development would have a significant adverse impact on the integrity of that setting?
No, not at all. That's academic disagreement is not something I've ever considered in giving any advice in my role.
What do you mean by that?
That really is cross-examination. You ask the question, you've got the answer.
I think I've got the Vernon's position.
Thank you very much indeed. No further questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Thank you very much.
Free to return to your seats. Well, that brings us to the end of the inquiry proceedings. As I indicated at the start, to make closing submissions, we shall do so in writing. Now I'd suggested a deadline for Historic Environment Scotland and Mr Sinclair of 14th November, and the applicant following week, 21st of November. Is that okay with parties? I see no. You don't have a poker face.
No, you know what? There's no point in pretending. Would it be possible, depending, of course, on your view and the applicant's position, to push that out by a week? Historic Environment Scotland members who have another hearing session next week, which would make turning around a submission and having that approved internally within ES.
Well, I appreciate the various juggles with and I think we worked with the applicant in terms of setting the date this with the availability of Mr.
I've no.
Who didn't make it in the end. So if it's fine with both parties, it won't hold me up. I have plenty to be getting on with other aspects of my report. And I will be issuing the procedure notice on the conditions separately from that. Although if you want to liaise informally to speed up that process, Mr. Pollard, I will also include the council in the procedure notice on the conditions so that they have an opportunity to comment as they would be implementing that plan commission. They would be monitoring it. Plan commission is granted.
So can I just confirm that would be the 21st for Historic Environment Scotland and the 28th for.
Yes, with that.
That will assist me. I have a full week in the tribunal next week and a wood farm inquiry the following week. So
I will let Mr. The case officer will let Mr. Sinclair. So the 21st is the deadline.
And I got no email has just come in while we've been sitting here about the release of that notification. So Minister, but
well, I will add that. I will add that to the procedure notice and that buys you a little bit of time to get that tied up. That I'll ask the question.
Thank you.
That can be, if you can let us keep us informed about the ability to lodge it, and then I will include it in the procedure notice to see that allow parties to comment on it. Does anyone else have anything else? Great. Thank you all for your participation in the inquiry. To the observers here in the room and online, Mr. Falk, thank you for your attendance over the last few days. I'd also like to thank the EPA case officers and their IT staff for their help in keeping things on track. So I'll now proceed to write up my report for submission to Scottish officers, who will then consider it and make their decision in due course. So I'll now close the inquiry.